and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling TV show from a streaming service.
And that classic pro wrestling TV show could be from just about any promotion in the world, just about any time period going way back or relatively recent, I guess, on a cosmic scale at least. Still classic times. And boy, oh boy, we've said this a few times this season about if you ever wondered if the randomizer was legit or not, this show is an example of that. And boy, is this week's episode an example of that, as we will go back in time to review one of the final shows of WWE's version of ECW.
That's right. How the randomizer works for those new to the show, we take a bunch of TV shows from all over the internet. We dump them into what we call the randomizer. We fire it up, and at random, it will spit out a show, and we will watch that show. This came up, and often, season 1 of the podcast, we reviewed major events, so pay-per-views, Clash of Champions, Saturday Night's Main Events. We reviewed those, and we noticed that a lot of the shows we got were some of the dying days of certain promotions, and
including ECW
Classic. Now, this is the WWE version of ECW, like you mentioned, and definitely this was the dying days, as it was done about a month after this show aired. Now, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter reports that the ECW name dates back, obviously, to Paul Heyman's changing of Eastern Championship Wrestling to Extreme Championship Wrestling on August 30th, 1994. That was when Shane Douglas threw down the NWA Championship belt that he'd won in a tournament, and he declared the new championship that of Extreme Championship Wrestling. McMahon, who purchased the rights to the name and the intellectual property in the bankruptcy court back in 2001, used the name in the 2001 WWE, WCW, and ECW invasion angle that they did.
Which may be the most memorable aspect of that was on the opening night of that angle, the incredible turn with a lot of the ECW originals turning on WWE wrestlers. And then an hour later, it being announced that Stephanie McMahon was in fact the owner now of ECW, thus ending that great turn, that great angle, and I believe less than an hour's time.
And with that intellectual property, WWE put out a video called The Rise and Fall of ECW, which became one of the best-selling pro wrestling videotape DVDs in history. McMahon, on the urging of Rob Van Dam, followed up on the success of that DVD with a pay-per-view called One Night Stand in 2005. In 2006, the decision, in conjunction with a second One Night Stand pay-per-view, was to recreate the brand ECW. The original idea is Shane McMahon would run it, and it would be broadcast on the internet and run shows on the road as a third brand of WWE, so Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. In hindsight, that concept was doomed to fail. Instead, Bonnie Hammer, an executive in the NBC Universal company, got ECW a time slot on the Sci-Fi Network. The television ratings were good, but attempts to tour on the road in smaller buildings did not do well, with shows generally doing about 1,000 to 1,200 fans and in the $25,000 gate range.
Well, if I remember correctly, they tried to do house shows in some of the sort of classic ECW strongholds. They ran a show in the old ECW arena, but it was like a less than 2-hour show. It was basically like a WWE house show style event. And like so many things about the reboot of ECW, it was not what ECW fans wanted, and it didn't have any appeal to your regular WWE fans. It was caught somewhere in the middle.
No, it was unsuccessful. And by the end of 2006, all ECW house shows were canceled, and the wrestlers were mostly used in prelim matches on SmackDown shows. Whatever was left of the original brand meaning was largely gone, with the disastrous December to Dismember pay-per-view, which
one of the worst of all time.
Absolutely. It only did 55,000 buys in North America, which also led to the end of Paul Heyman in WWE. Until 2010, the brand remained a C brand behind Raw and SmackDown, largely the first step for wrestlers that were called up from developmental. Florida Championship Wrestling was their minor league developmental territory. They would be sprinkled with, so these guys would be sprinkled with a few veterans who they either had no ideas for on the major show, or like Christian and William Regal, who we'll talk about on this show, were good workers who could guide the less experienced talent. The show opens, this is January 26th, 2010, and the show opens with a video recapping last week where Ezekiel Jackson was standing tall. ECW champion Christian is teaming with Kane to battle Ezekiel Jackson and William Regal tonight. If you like and love the iconic ECW theme song like we do,
it's not here.
You will not hear it here.
Instead we hear this. It's like a Nickelback knockoff, which is like the idea of a photocopy of a photocopy. You're starting from a deficit and going from there. It's bad. It's
they didn't try to be better. They didn't try to find something to top it.
It began. Well, I mean, when you think about it, so there's this opening tonight on ECW. Christian is seeing red. The big red monster, Kane. Okay, so that strike one doesn't feel like ECW. Then we get what sounded like Chad Kroger singing this intro. Then here on ECW, we cut to this massive arena and we get huge pyro for the ECW Open. If my memory serves me correctly, and this is not firsthand during the time knowledge, because I, as huge of an ECW fan as I was, and probably for the first year or so of the rebooted TV show, I really tried. I had long since given up here, so I did not watch this when it aired. But my recollection is that ECW was taped prior to SmackDown.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So that's why they're in this big arena. And throughout this show, we'll see fans sort of filing in. The next thing we then hear is ECW play-by-play man Josh Matthews. And the theme for this show, this ECW hour of television, is who will step up and grab Royal Rumble momentum, whatever that means. That is what Josh Matthews says this show is all about. We then cut to the ring, and
before that, I did want to mention, when we talk about when this reboot started, they did have Joey Styles, the classic ECW voice and announcer, as the play-by-play guy when they rebooted this brand. But
they also tried to, while it was in, and one of the things that doomed the TV show from the beginning was that they had it, again, I guess to save money, they were taping it, or they had it the same day as SmackDown, so it's in the big arena. They did at least use different lighting, and they had, instead of coming out through the big Titantron entranceway, they did have an entranceway off to the side that basically recreated the old ECW, broken brick entranceway. But yeah, that still didn't feel authentic, and this was as far from that as you could get.
Yes, that debut episode did have featured the Zombie in one of the opening matches as a a tip of the cap to the Sci-Fi Network. So here, like you mentioned, it's completely different. It's Josh Matthews and Byron Saxton as the
which they don't even introduce us to.
He does not get an introduction. He just appears. He chimes in later, just during the match. And
I'll have comments on this. The commentary on this show and the promos on this show are the absolute height. And I probably shouldn't say that. I should probably say whatever far to the opposite of height you want to use. That this is the zenith of WWE speak and scripted promos and scripted announcers. just it's not good. But what is good, one of the few things that got me excited on this show, the first thing we see in the ring is William Regal in maybe the most beautiful wrestling robe I've ever seen. It is
like
purple.
$1 million, yeah.
It's purple and gold velvet. I also noted that he looks like a human Crown Royal bottle.
He does. And I was excited to see him as well. We're huge William Regal fans on this podcast. He's in the ring. He introduces your next ECW champion, Ezekiel Jackson. We see clips of Jackson beating down Christian last week.
And getting DQ'd in ECW. He apparently also uses like a standing rock bottom as his finisher, basically meaning he hooks the guy for a rock bottom, a Uranagi type suplex, but he never leaves his feet. He just throws the guy down.
No, it's like a half Uranagi, half choke slam. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all bad. I guess is how that math works out. Then we get an Ezekiel Jackson promo. And wow, this is not good. He says, 5 days, Christian, 5 days. That's all you have left. Last week, we left you laying sprawled at my feet, because that's verbiage that human beings use. Then he says, and I quote, that image is going to repeat itself on Sunday as you drift in and out of consciousness. And this just went on and on. He was holding a microphone, but somehow sounded really quiet, even though the microphone was working. He's this big, jacked up dude that seemed kind of terrified to be talking. He seemed concerned about forgetting his scripted lines and just had negative charisma.
No, and really, he could have just stood there looking mean and flexing and let Regal do all the talking here. Like,
otherwise, why is Regal there?
Exactly. If this isn't his strong suit, but again, they're using this as a way to, this is kind of like a developmental show in a way, where this is your next step up here, and so they're going to give him a chance to do promos, and they were terrible. Now
the problem is, it's a developmental show that's showcasing how broken their developmental system was.
Yes, you're called up, and this is where your promos are at this point.
Yeah. We then hear, was it Josh Matthews or Byron Saxton that said this again, just so stilted and scripted. Here comes the acclaimed current and reigning ECW champion, and out comes Christian. And the thing that I notice, other than his music, is that this ECW title,
I literally have it written down. This belt looks dumb.
What in God's name is this championship? It is a like gray actual belt, and then the actual like plates on it are silver.
Silver. It's big. I guess but it's like
drive home.
Yeah, go ahead. No, it's.
I was just gonna say, just to drive home how not important this is. All the other belts are gold. This one is silver. I'm shocked they didn't make it bronze, considering this is the C show. Come in third place, win the ECW title. And I'm looking at it. I see the ECW logo on it. I'm like, there's some writing above it. And what does it say? On the ECW championship, above ECW, it says World Wrestling Entertainment.
This belt it's like it's world championship sized. It's a big belt.
Yes.
But it's silver with no, it's not like the last great silver belt, obviously, is the NWA television title, which had
or several IWGP championships ago. You look at, I believe, the second or third generation IWGP title.
Exactly,
it's a beautiful belt.
The thing the thing it has in common is there's pops of color somewhere, right? So whether
there's pops of
black,
something.
Yeah, whether it be black popping or the
little jewels on it.
Yes, or the red of the old NWA TV title. This is just gray and silver, and it's a mess, and there's nothing distinguishing about it. This is an awful belt, just horrendous, and that's why I have no memory of it, because it's not one you see belt collectors after. No. It's not one you see a lot of replica belts being sold of. No,
it's rare, and it's not because of supply, but it's because of demand.
Exactly.
It also, to me, what it looked like is like those old foam belts that you could buy at the arena for like $5. I remember going to my first WCW show, and I think they had a foam version of the world title, and it was just gray and obviously, as I indicated, foam. That's what this looked like. And it was sad seeing Christian here trying to look proud of holding this championship. We then get Christian saying that, Zeke, you like biblical quotes, so do I. After all, I'm Christian. And then we're all supposed to laugh because that was funny.
Groaned. It was a collective groan. And
it was so bad. And then he gives some biblical quote of
Ezekiel
some sort.
25:17, which immediately makes me think of Samuel L. Jackson doing the same quote from Pulp Fiction. But Samuel L. Jackson does it a million times better, delivery-wise, intensity-wise. Christian was doing this as comedy, and it was bad comedy at that.
Well, and it ended with, my peeps will know I am Captain Charisma when I lay my vengeance upon thee. Then Ezekiel Jackson says, funny guy, because this is just a great back and forth here. He says, you haven't faced anyone like me, Christian. Christian apparently is a 2-time ECW champion, which that's 2 times more than I realized until about 5 minutes ago.
I have the same thing noted here. Christian's a 2-time champion. I remember neither of these reigns. I was surprised when he came out as the champion. This was his second reign.
Yeah. Then Christian says he's managed to even the score, and then he like introduces Kane, but it's done in a way that it seemed like they were trying to push that we didn't know Kane was going to be his partner, even though they just told us that Kane was going to be his partner. So here comes Kane with a SmackDown logo graphic telling us who he is. And then Josh Matthews calls him the Walking Doomsday. I have no recollection of that being a tagline for Kane. They get in the ring. We get the corner flames pyro, and then we go to commercial break. And apparently we are going to start the show after this in-ring talking segment. Another thing that felt nothing like ECW. We're back from camera, and it is Christian, or we're back from commercial, excuse me. And it is Christian and William Regal locking up. And the first thing I notice is that for parts of this show, they use this like weird second hard cam that's lower and a little bit closer. And it almost reminds me of a camera shot they would use on WWF syndicated TV show, like in the late 80s, early 90s. A weird look, especially because they would go from this to that slightly further back and just slightly higher up hard cam. And so it just felt, it was just a strange look when they transition from one to the other.
Like you mentioned, Christian and Regal start a quick flurry of offense, and Jackson quickly tags in. But Christian, the valiant fighting champion babyface, tags in Kane immediately.
Yes, exactly. We then get double shoulder blocks. Each guy runs at each other. Nobody budges. Ezekiel Jackson is flexing and screaming.
About it. He's screaming about it, yeah.
He's screaming, but it's like, I don't know. We have seen so many times where big, physically imposing guys are just ranting and raving and screaming and flexing in the ring. And every single one of them has come off more, I don't know, just more scary, more intense, more intimidating than Ezekiel Jackson here. The thing I couldn't shake when I was watching him the entire time he was out there is, like in any other era of pro wrestling, Ezekiel Jackson is in that Rock Hard Rick 1989 Mike Awesome spot of being a big dude that's not impressive at all and is getting thrown around by bigger guys, basically as a jobber on weekly TV.
Yeah, so the lot of screaming. Kane punches him in the mouth. Christian's in, and we get our Royal Rumble preview.
Well, before we get a Royal Rumble preview, did you note or did you catch Josh Matthews says that Ezekiel Jackson eliminated Kane at something called the ECW Homecoming Finale? And that is how he got this upcoming title shot against Christian? Do you have any idea what that could possibly be?
No, I did not.
In 2010 or late 2009, I'm guessing, Ezekiel Jackson appeared at something called the ECW Homecoming Finale and eliminated Kane, who was also appearing at the ECW Homecoming Finale. Was this a battle royal?
Sounds
Considering
like
he
it,
eliminated him? Just what in God's name are we watching?
So we get our Royal Rumble preview. Christian uses his quickness. Jackson missed the elbow, and then Kane's right back in. Regal and Jackson double team Kane in the corner. Regal starts.
How about Kane like being a wrestler here, doing arm ringers when he gets tagged in?
Christian uses his quickness. Jackson misses an elbow, and Kane's back in. Regal and Jackson double team Kane in the corner. Regal's working over the leg of Kane. Tags in Jackson, who squashes Kane in the corner with an avalanche.
Yeah, like a Vader bomb style in the corner.
And then we get a front face lock on Kane. Really?
Oh, is that what it was?
This was really, yeah.
The loosest front face lock you have ever seen. Again, from this giant, physically imposing man visually, Ezekiel Jackson. No intensity, even when he's trying to be intense. It's so hard to describe unless you watch it, but you're watching a guy trying so hard and just accomplishing so little.
Kane, he's able to make the hot tag to Christian, who runs wild on Jackson. Drop kick off the middle rope.
Well, before that, Ezekiel Jackson does this thing he has already done 4 times in this match, where a guy goes to Irish whip him and he grabs the guy's wrist with both his hands and stops the Irish whip from happening. It's a cool spot, but he's done it 4 times in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, after the middle rope drop kick, goes for the cover. We get a huge kick out by Jackson. Christian can't hit the kill switch, but hits an inverted DDT. He knocks Regal down on the apron, throws Jackson to the floor. Christian then, with a springboard off the middle turnbuckle, hits a plancha over the top rope to the floor.
Yeah, out of the corner. He runs up to the corner, jumps to the second rope, and then jumps from the second rope inside of the ring over the top rope to the floor. We go to commercial, as you said, and at this point, I'm thinking, well, this show is nothing so far, but man, Christian looks fantastic here.
He did. He was carrying the entertainment value in this match by far.
He was moving. He was far more athletic than I expected him to be here. Like, he was always a very good wrestler, but he was perpetual motion here.
Back in the ring, Christian tries to whip Jackson into the ropes, but Jackson puts on the brakes and just throws Christian over the top to the floor. Regal tries to attack Christian, but Christian just smacks Regal hard in the face.
How about before that? Right when we get back from commercial, Kane hits a short arm clothesline, and then he hits a running basement drop kick. Like, what is Kane doing in this match? We're getting, like, he is the guy that is, I get it and I admire it, but it is just so strange. He's less of a walking doomsday and more of just a technician. He's hitting arm ringers. He's doing running basement drop kicks. I don't know if he's inspired by the athleticism of Christian in this match and he's trying to keep up with them, but it's a little weird.
Christian turns around and Jackson just runs him over. Regal's in there now with Christian. Christian with a springboard off the middle turnbuckle into a sunset flip. And my question for you, Adam, is the middle turnbuckle sunset flip better than a top rope sunset flip?
This is acceptable. You get more torque as you're spinning through the air. His back was to him, and it's a counter. You are getting thrown into the ropes and you are thinking, what can I do? I will jump to the second rope and then jump back off, somersault down, and try to get the guy in a quick pin. It is thinking on your feet and making the best of a bad situation. The top rope sunset flip, which was Johnny B. Bad's finisher for a while, you are making the conscious decision when you have your opponent down and hurting that rather than go for a pin, go for a high impact move, maybe slap on a submission hold, you're making the choice to walk to the top rope, jump as high as you can into the air, somersault, and take a back bump with the hope that you will land perfectly. And while you are sweaty and your opponent is sweaty, you will be able to grab onto his legs and take him down for a sunset flip. Could not be more different.
Thank you for the clarification for the listeners. I
I
thought
don't
of you.
like the top rope sunset flip.
I thought
for
he
new
saw
listeners.
the second one.
It is the move version of Greg the Hammer Valentine for me. It's my Greg the Hammer Valentine in wrestling move form.
Regal tags Jackson in, holds Christian because he's a tag team pro. And we love the little things here. We've been seeing Regal do this for decades, and I love it every single time.
He's great in this match. We don't get a ton of him, but what we do when it's just him being Regal and throwing forearms and knees like he does, everything looks mean and nasty, hitting a great double underhook suplex. He's always great.
Jackson, he's stepping on the face of Christian. Regal in so that they can double team on Christian. You mentioned the butterfly suplex by Regal. Jackson doing his best Regal impression when he's in there with the forearm to the face of Christian.
At this point, I note that I think I finally figured out who Ezekiel Jackson is. He's the Warlord.
That's a good comp. He's a little
guy,
more mobile, a little more athletic, maybe.
A little, but he's a big dude that should be intimidating, but isn't. And just, after about 30 seconds, like, yeah, okay, this guy doesn't have it. It's the same. It's not gonna work.
It's exactly the same intensity level. Like what you saw intensity wise from the Warlord is exactly what you see from.
It's a guy that's gym scary, but the second you get him in a ring, he doesn't come across that scary. At this point, Josh Matthews says, and I quote, "This beating has been agonizing," and I could not agree with Josh Matthews more. And then to follow that up, Ezekiel Jackson puts him in like a double underhook, like he's going to do a butterfly suplex, a double underhook suplex, and then he just holds him there, ostensibly in a submission hold, and he's yelling, "I got him!" And I write, "You do not."
No, was this another front face lock attempt, but this time with the double underhook on?
I think so. I mean,
instead of holding the head. Why would this
I think he
move
maybe
hurt?
gave up since he couldn't do that. And he's like, okay, I just saw Regal do the double underhook. I'll do that too, and I will hold my man here.
I couldn't figure. I literally I stopped to think about how this move would hurt, and I couldn't.
Exactly. This is a control move.
Yes.
This is a rest hold, as you hear so often talked about. I don't know that I've ever seen a more accurate, a move that could be more accurately described as a rest hold.
This was not a submission attempt of any kind here. No, absolutely.
No, other than submitting the listeners or the viewers into changing the channel. The crowd, to their credit, they're hyped for this. I think because it's the first thing they're seeing after they enter the arena. So they're rallying behind Christian, trying to get him to the corner.
Yeah, Christian can't tag, leading to more double teaming. We get the great knees in the corner thrown by Regal. Christian fights Regal off. He hits a back elbow off the middle rope, and he makes the hot tag to Kane. Kane beats up Regal. The highlight is when he throws Regal into the corner. And Regal has his mouth open, screaming every time he's thrown in the corner. This was great stuff. I rewound it and watched that twice. Regal's
yes,
amazing.
and this was also more of the Kane that you expect. This was if Michael Cole is calling it, he would say this is vintage Kane. He makes the tags, you said, runs wild, punches those little throat chops. He hits a big backdrop out of the corner, running clotheslines in the corner, as you said. That certainly elicited a reaction from William Regal. Hits his big Kane side slam. Then he goes for his top rope clothesline, which is always a little awkward to begin with, but it's really weird here. He almost he's trying to hit it, but he gets a little too vertical toward the mat as he's coming down. And for a second, I thought he was just going to lawn dart himself directly into the mat, but he did not.
No, he just hit him with a fist off the top. It wasn't even like a clothesline. It was like a punch to the head. It was not good.
No. At this point, he goes for his choke slam, his goozle, but Ezekiel Jackson breaks it up.
A big boot by Kane. He tagged Christian back in. Christian to the top. Kane does a rocket launcher as Christian lands on Jackson. Jackson and Kane then fight to the floor. A kill switch attempt by Christian on Regal. He counters with a throw.
Yeah, just an overhead suplex, I guess would be the best way you could describe it. It was like a capture suplex, not quite an exploder, but the same effect. Still cool. At this point on the outside, Ezekiel Jackson posts Kane. Regal goes for his running knee trembler, but does not hit it.
He misses the knee. Christian hits the kill switch, but Regal blind tagged Jackson while in mid-move, who comes in.
Yeah, while Christian was turning him around to hit the kill switch, and while his, Regal's arms were held by Christian in the middle of this move, he had the wherewithal to make the tag. And Ezekiel Jackson, as you said, comes in after Christian hits his move.
Yeah, he hits his finisher, that weird Uranagi we described earlier where he doesn't go down. And he gets the pin on the ECW champion. Jackson flexes and poses over the fallen Christian. And I had to look ahead to see what happened at the Royal Rumble. And Ezekiel Jackson would lose to Christian at the Royal Rumble. But
that match was long, by the way. It felt, I don't know how long it actually was. I didn't bother to look it up because I had already spent enough time on that match just by watching it. But it like so much of this show, like both matches, there are only 2 on this program. It just felt like the edict was, all right, you guys have 8 minutes of a match. Go out there and do double that. We got to fill time. Like, in some ways, this felt like the very beginning of the content era of pro wrestling television, where there is no actual goal other than to fill out the 1 hour of contractually obligated entertainment, quote unquote, that you must provide.
On the final episode of WWE's version of ECW, it would air on February 16th. Ezekiel Jackson defeated Christian to win the ECW championship in an Extreme Rules match.
Well, nothing says goodbye ECW like that.
Which makes him the final ECW champion ever, Ezekiel Jackson.
As an aside, I always loved the idea that ECW, which was this company with no rules, just wild, out of control, that in its latter years of being rebooted, that the way that you denoted a match being contested under, like a traditional ECW match, was that you called it ECW rules. The idea that rules were what you were citing here, I was always amused by. We then see a graphic, and as we see this graphic, Josh Matthews says there is a lot of history between these 6 superstars, all culminating tonight. And if I gave you, whether that be you, Jeremy Deemer, or you, the fine listener of this podcast, the rest of your life to guess who these 6 men are, maybe even guess 3 of them.
Maybe 3.
You would never in a million years get it. And this is what we see on the graphic, again, as Josh Matthews talks about the history between these 6 men coming to a boil this evening in our main event. One team is comprised of Yoshi Tatsu, Goldust, and the Hurricane. They're taking on Zack Ryder, a young Trent Barreta, and a guy that at this point I could not identify at all, that we eventually learned was a human being named Caylen or Caden Croft.
Correct. Yes. This looked like if the randomizer booked a weird 6-man tag main event.
This looked like if the randomizer booked a fundraiser indie show at a high school.
Yeah, this was going to be our main event. So
on ECW. but before we get there, on this ECW television show, we now must spend many minutes talking about the Royal Rumble.
That's right.
And the way I have to get this in, the way that they introduce this is another one of those WWE verbiage things that no human being would ever say if it was not in front of them on a sheet of paper, or they did not have to memorize it. Josh Matthews, our play-by-play guy, the man guiding us through this hour of professional wrestling, says the emotion of the WWE universe will be at a fever pitch at the Royal Rumble?
They run down that Rumble card.
What does that mean? I'm sorry. I cannot leave this. This is a family show, so I can't say the things I want to say. I cannot use the words that I want to say. But what does that mean? The emotion of the WWE Universe will be at a fever pitch at the Royal Rumble. Yeah. And it gets better. It gets better because here on this episode of ECW, we get a preview of Randy Orton versus Sheamus, which, quick aside, that was a match in 2010. And what Byron Saxton, this is the beginning of his pearls of wisdom that he imparts on us throughout this show. He says, and I quote, "Who will up the ante of their barbaric nature to outdo the other?" What? Oh. What is that? Who would say that?
No.
Who would hear that and think, "Oh man, they're going to up the ante of their barbaric nature to outdo each other. I need to buy this pay-per-view."
No, if I started this podcast by explaining the opening match in that way, all of our listeners would have tuned out. All of our Patreon subscribers would have canceled. They're like, I can't listen to this guy talk. No. But however, we do get the rest of the Royal Rumble card, and I was intrigued by the Rey Mysterio challenging The Undertaker for the World Championship. I kind of want to see that match in 2010.
Yes, I wrote down Undertaker versus Rey Mysterio for the big gold belt. I want to see this! ! And I do. That's not all, though, because they run down the individual matches for the Royal Rumble. Then we get like a 5-minute video feature about all the numbers related to the Royal Rumble. They talk about 23 winners, and we see clips of past winners. 627 different entrants from 1988 to 2009. Steve Austin has eliminated 36 guys. Kane eliminated 11 in one match. Then they say Hot Atlanta, which I'm sure it's just like in Chicago when you say the Windy City. It does not endear yourself to anyone by calling a city by its lame name, but they say that Triple H won the Rumble the last time it was in Hot Atlanta. We then see Warlord, which just it's a great through line for my comparison to Ezekiel Jackson, lasting 2 seconds. This felt like a 8-minute de facto Royal Rumble control center.
Yeah,
I needed Joe Pedicino.
I do love the Royal Rumble stats video package. I've always loved that video package because it's the only time that the WWE actually does anything with stats or numbers. So
or acknowledges their history.
Yeah,
it's
always
the only
jumps
time where
out.
you see something from like 15 years ago that isn't tied to something that is a storyline now. It's just them using and leveraging their storied history. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, I love that. I love those video packages for that.
It just felt like such filler. Like this whole show was just, they had a couple of matches, which if the ECW TV show didn't exist, would have just been dark matches. Nothing different than what we're seeing here. And then they were just searching through like the tape room of what else can we put on this to pad the show.
In the back, Shelton Benjamin cuts a promo, and this promo was not good either.
This promo was basically him saying everything we just saw in the Royal Rumble video, but with less conviction. And then he as he says, it just matters if you're the last man standing. He gets attacked, and it is Vance Archer.
So I paused the video here. I looked at this man and I said, holy cow, how did they make him look so generic? He didn't look this generic in TNA.
No, he was ridiculous in TNA, but he didn't look generic as Lance Hoyt.
This was generic. I'm like, I had no memory of Lance Archer in WWE, and obviously I would not have had any memory because this guy was such a generic zero. Like, holy cow.
It's amazing when you think of after this disaster when he went to New Japan as Lance Archer, sort of bridging the gap between his two previous names, and then went on to create this very believable big man psycho character that's, gone on to be very successful. Here he has short hair, and he cuts one of the worst promos I've ever heard for as short as it was. After he takes out Shelton Benjamin, he says, "Hopes and dreams are all Shelton Benjamin has because that's reality." I don't know why that was his catchphrase. Was he supposed to be a reality TV star? I don't know. But then Josh Matthews gets very hushed, and he calls this man that we just saw, he calls him the Icy Archer.
Ugh.
What?
Ugh.
What does that even mean?
This was so bad. I still can't believe that they like, you see the New Japan version of Lance Archer and the AEW version of Lance Archer, and you're like, man, it seems like he's exactly the prototype guy that the WWE would want.
Yes, big man, can move, scary, unique look, intensity, checks all the boxes. And then you look at him here,
and you're like, oh, they had him, and they ruined him. Yes, awful.
It is a sight to behold. This is right around the same time as they brought in Chris Harris, formerly of America's Most Wanted and TNA, teaming with James Storm, and they called him Braden Walker, and he was on ECW for like a month. Same time period, kind of the same deal, but a much bigger miss, obviously, with Lance Archer, or as they called him here, Vance the Icy Archer.
Zack Ryder comes out with Rosa Mendez
and his one-legged pants. He's wearing like regular wrestling tights. One leg has long tights, the other leg does not.
No, it's got the other leg. So he's got short trunks for the other leg. This looks ridiculous. Yeah,
it is not a good look, particularly for like a tall, relatively jacked guy like this. We see some.
Now, speaking of ECW, Easy Money is calling Zack Ryder to say your gear looks ridiculous.
Yes, exactly. This Easy Money with the short tights and those like chap/stirrups would look
gross.
much better than this. This show could use some Jason Jett, that's for sure. We see a video of from a previous show of Zack Ryder calling himself the new heart and soul superhero of ECW. Then the Hurricane comes out and hits him with a top rope crossbody. I admire the fact that you knew right away this was Rosa Mendez. I had no idea who it was until they eventually told us. We go to commercial. We come back and we hear that Fozzy is not the official theme song of the Royal Rumble, but one of the official theme songs of the Royal Rumble. So I can only imagine what else we had here. Then out comes Trent Barreta and his tag team partner that they inform us is named Caylen Croft, which I saw him and I'm like, this is just completely generic, but it just shocked me that I had never seen or heard of this guy before.
No, both of these guys came out of the make Lance Archer generic machine. These two guys are exactly cut from the same generic nothing. Trent Barreta and Caylen Croft. They were zeros, especially next to Zack Ryder. When Zack Ryder is outshining you with his charisma and star power, you know that you're extra generic. So these guys were nothing. Their opponents.
Then their opponents, again, the natural trio of the Hurricane, Goldust, and Yoshi Tatsu.
Yeah.
And there are so many things you could say about this team. This group of three men, but the only thing that matters to me is Yoshi Tatsu's music.
Met a superstar quite like
Introducing next, from Tokyo, Japan, weighing 220 pounds, Yoshi Tatsu.
And Yoshi Tatsu, the Cinderella story of ECW, and the other half of the, I guess you could call them the distinguished odd couple of ECW, referring to Yoshi Tatsu and Goldust. A lot of rivalries in this match. Sure, there's been a budding rivalry between Trent Barreta, Caylen Croft, and Yoshi Tatsu and Goldust. Looks like Croft is going to start things off with Goldust. You know, Caylen Croft and Trent Barreta told me they feel that Goldust and Yoshi Tatsu are just jealous of their friendship. Huh.
You have never heard in your life a theme song that more instantaneously lays it out bare and stark for you that the man you are about to see is the geek of the week, an absolute jobber, and a man who you should not take seriously or put your faith in. It sounds like a select screen from a video game for N64. It's just, and it just keeps going. It's just this bouncy, weird collection of sounds. It's not good.
No, not at all. So Goldust starts out by beating up everyone.
He does. Also, Josh Matthews tells us that there's a budding friendship between Goldust and Yoshitatsu. They are, in fact, great friends. Goldust is teaching Yoshitatsu English, and Yoshitatsu is teaching Goldust Japanese. We are also told in the same line of discussion that there is a budding rivalry between Goldust and Yoshitatsu and Trent Barreta and Caylen Croft. And the reason this is happening is because Trent Barreta and Caylen Croft are jealous of the friendship of Goldust and Yoshitatsu. I write all caps, okay, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. That's you.
He also
why
he calls Goldust. This is another direct quote. The Maverick Goldust.
Hurricane now in with Zack Ryder. He charges at Hurricane, who drops down low bridge, and Ryder goes flying over the top rope to the floor.
Are you sure this is the Hurricane? Because Byron Saxton told me this was the Emerald Skywalker.
Yeah, I had tuned out so much commentary at this point, like it just went in one ear and out the other because it was
good thing I'm here.
Thank goodness, because I my brain had just had enough after the first.
And for me, it's the exact opposite, and this is why outside of this podcast, I cannot watch even anything remotely modern WWE. It's because, whether it be the shaky zoom in, zoom out camera stuff or the million camera cuts, but more than anything, the WWE speak, these weird names they give guys, these weird nicknames, the catchphrases, all that stuff. I cannot tune it out, and it is so distracting to me. So I guess, like I said, it's good that you have me here to fill in those blanks. And it's a shame I got distracted from this incredible action.
It's me that Zack Ryder is working well with Barreta and Croft. Similar styles between the three superstars.
Of course, I mean, these guys can imagine, they go hang out at the Cheesecake Factory, then play non-stop Guitar Hero, and then tweet about it later. Well, let's go. Does that amaze you?
I'm going to move on as Caylen Croft wearing down the Hurricane here.
After commercial, Croft and Tatsu are wrestling, and it seems everyone who comes in does an arm drag and an arm bar. Every single person.
Goldust arm drags and arm bars. Everybody. That is the move for this match. I don't know if they missed the day of arm drag finishing school, and so then it was Goldust's job to teach the heels, particularly Barreta and Croft, how to take these arm drags. But yeah, there were a lot of them.
Yeah, Barreta in now with Goldust, and surprise, arm drag again. Tags in the Hurricane. Barreta whips Hurricane into the corner. Boot, then off the middle rope, hits the Hurricanrana, the Hurricane. Get it? Ha ha.
So funny. Printed on a t-shirt.
He goes for the Shining Wizard, but Barreta rolls to the apron. Sliding dropkick by Hurricane knocks him all the way to the outside.
And we mentioned, you're talking about the outside. I feel like there needs to be an honorable mention for how terrible Rosa Mendez is here. You can hear her from time to time, and she is yelling things, but it is so unconvincing. It's really an advertisement for getting rid of managers, which I would never say, and I hated when WWE did it. But wow, not very good.
No value. Hurricane then with a plancha over the top rope to the floor. Gets distracted on the apron, which allows Barreta to sweep the legs out, and Ryder goes to work.
Can we also talk about the fact that Byron Saxton, for no discernible reason, calls Trent Barreta a boy wonder. He also says, and we'll get to it because I know it's coming up a little bit later in the match, but I don't want to forget this. Byron Saxton says, again, this is another quote, Caylen Croft is dispelling every ounce of those her powers of the Hurricane.
He is. He's in and he puts on a full Nelson.
Yeah, well, I wrote that down. This guy who's like 5'9", 170 pounds, not out of shape, but nary a muscle you could find. And he is doing a full Nelson.
The only reason he's doing a full Nelson is to allow Hurricane to fight out of the full Nelson and power out of it in a comedy spot. But he gets cut off quickly by Croft again. Barreta then springboards in from the outside, but just drops right down on his feet and then brushes Hurricane's face with his foot. This move
it was
is
lame. This was not like Kenta doing that. This was whatever the opposite of that would be like. It was
and no reaction, zero reaction.
It's funny too because Trent Barreta, he's another one of those guys that it's like, man, I didn't realize how much of a nothing he was before he went to New Japan and got really, really good. But he is just, as you would say, a complete zero here.
Absolutely. He does hit a nice drop kick, but then more chin locks. This time, Ryder's got a chin lock on Hurricane. Croft back in. They continue beating on the Hurricane in the least impressive way possible. This beating was nothing.
And it went on and on and on. Barreta did throw a really good like Dynamite Kid, Chris Benoit style forearm. That kind of shook me for a second. But then he tags in Croft, and Croft just goes in for a cover and then locks another front face lock on. Amazingly, this crowd, I guess they're excited for SmackDown coming up. They start to rally and help the Hurricane fight back.
Yeah, Hurricane with a backdrop tries to make the hot tag, but Croft tries to roll him up from behind. Hurricane rolls through and hits the Shining Wizard.
Is that a Shining Wizard, though?
They told me it was.
This was like a very low Enziguri.
I've never been impressed with his Shining Wizard. His Shining Wizard's always been weak.
Yeah, I've been more impressed by it every other time I saw him do it than this time.
This was not good.
This was particularly bad. He makes the hot tag to Yoshi Tatsu, who for some reason they keep calling the Cinderella story of ECW. Then Byron Saxton, maybe his best, and I say that very sarcastically, his best line yet, he says, "The eternal flame of pride of Yoshi Tatsu is burning strong."
He runs wild, like you mentioned, hits a huge backdrop on Barreta. Big kicks, goes up top, almost like a spinning heel kick.
Yeah, this was awesome. This top rope spin kick off. This was very cool. And it was far more athletic than I remember him being.
Yeah, the way it lands like a leg drop across the face.
Yeah.
So it's like a double whammy. The pin gets broken up by Ryder. All 6 men are in the ring. Goldust punches Croft and Barreta.
Well, no. So what happens is, Barreta and Croft, they throw Goldust off the ropes. They're going for a double backdrop. Goldust drops down, that drop down uppercut that he does. He hits Barreta with it, but it somehow, he hits Croft with it, but Barreta also sells it, even though he does not get hit. This is what I thought I saw. And then upon the slow motion replay that they give us after the finish, that is in fact what happened. I don't know if the friendship that the two men have is so strong. Maybe they're trying to prove that the friendship that they have is stronger than the friendship that Goldust and Yoshi Tatsu have. That one they're so jealous over that Josh told us about earlier, that the bond is so strong that when Caylen Croft gets hit with a punch, Trent Barreta sells it.
Yes, my mind gave them the benefit of the doubt here, and I thought he punched Barreta as well. Barreta then turns, and Tatsu kicks Barreta in the head, gets the 3 count.
Yeah, he does. And then he celebrates it as if like he's an 8-year-old that got pulled out of the crowd to compete, to wrestle in this match, and somehow beats a real life pro wrestler. And then so he's like, it's just so lame. Like this Yoshi Tatsu is a trained pro wrestler, and he's out there celebrating like he's never won in his life. The announcers are screaming out how this is a Cinderella story. Josh is calling him the cardiac kid.
Yeah, what a Cinderella story it was. Good guys celebrate as this nothing show goes off the air.
Well, it goes off the air as Josh Matthews tries to somehow spin this action between these 6 men as a preview of what you will see in the Royal Rumble match coming up this Sunday.
ECW for this show on January 26th did a 0.9 rating, 1.16 million viewers, another of the lowest marks the show had ever done. At the end, ECW had been doing 0.9 ratings, which would be average for the Sci-Fi Network. But on a station that caters to science fiction shows, a pro wrestling show that draws average ratings isn't compatible with the rest of the network programming and can't draw good ad rates. It provides no value. It is not a valuable asset.
I agree.
Vince McMahon announced on February 2nd, ECW television show. So just a short week after this show we reviewed, on the February 2nd ECW television show, that the end of the nearly 16-year-old Extreme Championship Wrestling brand name would happen. The time slot would be given to a reality show called NXT, which is a story for another podcast.
Oh my God. Yeah. I have vague memories of that show, of like there being matches, but there were like obstacle courses and contests and fan votes. If you've never seen it, it's not the NXT that you're probably thinking of.
No, this is the reality show version. And
well, maybe Vance Archer could be on it.
And yeah, maybe the randomizer will treat us at some point to NXT, and I'll tell you all about it then. So yeah, ECW's 16-year run comes to an end after this show here. So that was the end of ECW, the WCW version, or the WWE version, the post-invasion angle with WCW version, and the original version. All of it ended here later in 2010. Sad way to go out. This was as the WWEC show. Nothing happened here. This was nothing. Felt like a zero. I think Florida Championship Wrestling would have been more of an entertaining show than this
Derby
show.
City Wrestling would have been a more entertaining show.
The syndicated Superstars show that was on WGN America at this time was probably a better show. Yeah, just nothing happening here. No interest in watching this at all. I
do not recommend.
Do not recommend.
I mean, if you're going to try to draw things out of the show to say they were good, Christian, just in ring, I thought looked fantastic for what he had to work with. Just again, like I said, perpetual emotion. Everything he did looked great. You got to see a little bit of Regal being Regal, but you can get either of those things in much better quality and volume from any number of pro wrestling television shows. You don't need to get it here from this episode of WWE ECW. Worst thing for me by far is the forced commentary lines from both Byron Saxton and Josh Matthews. Just absolute cringe stuff, just coupled with the fact that while I think everybody had already accepted that this was ECW in name only, just what a depressing show to watch for anyone who had a strong connection to actual ECW, to parachute into this, even having a sense of what it was going to be. It still just leaves you feeling pretty bummed out.
Worst thing for me was Shelton Benjamin's promo. I thought that was horrendous. It was absolutely terrible.
Honorable mention to the usage of Lance/Vance Archer.
Absolutely. Best thing obviously is the Goldust is always fun. He's good at what he does. William Regal, a national treasure, and Christian was like you mentioned, pretty athletic and entertaining as well. So
yeah, I would actually revise it to say that the MVP of this show was the robe of William Regal.
100%. The Crown Royal comparison, very apt. Definitely enjoy that. And if you enjoy us reviewing terrible shows like this, but also 5-star matches and great shows, then there's not only the full back catalog of this podcast available for free right now, evergreen content waiting for you. If you go back, you can listen to any of these shows in our archives, and if you haven't heard it, it's new to you, and it's evergreen and ready to rock and roll. So go, and if you want to go listen to the pay-per-view recap of Capital Combat 90, The Return of RoboCop, it is waiting for you right now. If you want to go back to see what regular ECW is like, episode 1 of season 2, we review Hardcore TV from ECW. So go back and listen to that as well. If you've already listened to all of that great content in the free feed, you're a fan of this show, you're enjoying it, you want some bonus content, we've got that for you as well. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. There we've got hours of additional bonus content. You can get that feed right now. You can hear us review 5-star matches, multiple 5-star matches, multiple big events, Hustle 3, Clash of the Champions 9. We've got a lot of good stuff waiting for you.
Also, random stuff like William Regal versus Samoa Joe from a UPW show as one example, or the Larry and Kurt Hennig versus the Road Warriors, with some great play-by-play from our favorite play-by-play announcer on this podcast,
Ron Trongard. Yeah, we love
Ron
him.
Trongard. Absolutely. And as you said, plenty of content there, many hours already there, and that is a weekly show as well. So if you subscribe, you support us at patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom, you will not only, obviously you can continue to subscribe to the free feed, you will have a reservoir of already recorded and uploaded podcasts there in the Patreon feed, and you will have new podcasts each and every week coming from us there as well. They are exclusive. That is the only place you can get them, completely separate from the shows we do here.
And we have plenty of patrons who have purchased the tier that allows you to be the randomizer. You can commission a show, executive produce it. You choose the show we watch. And we've had a few folks do that as well. So you can always bump up to that tier, pick a show for us to watch, bump down to the tier where you get all of that bonus content and keep on listening. So go to patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. You can see we've got t-shirts, we've got Be the Randomizer, we've got all the bonus content there waiting for you. And we appreciate the support of all of our patrons and all of our future patrons that are listening to this right now.
Absolutely. You don't just make the show, you make the show better, and you also allow it to exist, which is pretty important.
And we love to hear about when you're watching the show, so please interact with us. We love to hear it. We'll respond back at all times. So do that. The easiest way is via Twitter, at WrestleAtRandom. If you're off Twitter because it's a cesspool, I get it. We also have an email, wrestlingatrandom@gmail.com. Wrestle at Random's also the Instagram as well. Give us a follow there. And every single Thursday, we will post what the upcoming week's free feed will cover. And we'll also let you know what is in the Patreon tier as well. So make sure you're subscribed to all of the social media platforms. All of the links that I just mentioned are available at the website, which has the entire back catalog. That's wrestlingatrandom.com. And if you can't support our show financially, we get it in these times. Your word of mouth, your telling other wrestling fans about us helps spread the word, helps us teach them how to subscribe to a podcast. Tell your wrestling fan friends about us. Tell your friends that used to be wrestling fans about us.
Yes, and make sure you tell your former wrestling fan friends about us and about this podcast. Maybe they were big ECW fans before, and if you want to really troll them and just get them one last time, tell them, hey, listen to this podcast. Watch this episode of ECW first, and then check out these two guys talk about it. I'm sure that'll really patch things up.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
Thank you, Jeremy. I always enjoy doing this podcast with you. The randomizer tested that by giving us this show to watch, but it was fine. It wasn't objectionably bad. It just it didn't need to exist.
It didn't. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.